goes that way. And it never goes that way because, like you said before, it's sort of axiomatic. Trump is not willing to shut them down. He's just not willing to resist them or go there. He doesn't care enough, or whatever the reason is. It's hard to know what's in his heart or in his mind. He won't do it. And then, I think it was like 3 days before we went to war, he goes, it's not on radar that Trump is going to attack Iran. That's not on radar. It's like, buddy, read the tea leaves. Like, of course he's going to go and bomb Iran. So, and I kind of get where you're coming from about the Pompeo. I was even skeptical about the Pompeo thing because I said they got a list of these people they're going to put in. And that's why I'm a big believer in this. It's not even, people say, are you going to vote for a Democrat? We got to think beyond that. To me, it's just about rejection. They set the table, and you can't really choose what's on the table, but you could choose whether to eat or not, whether you're going to play the game. And so my bigger idea is just reject. And I like what you said. It encapsulates it. It's bullshit. No, thank you. You're promising stuff you're not going to deliver. When you put the stuff out there, the big beautiful bill, $150 billion for border enforcement, they're not deporting even 1,000.
So early in podcast, Dev and Nick dive into Donald Trump, and honestly, it's fascinating how different tones are. Dev seems more skeptical. He acknowledges Trump's energy, but he questions whether Trump really stood up to the system. Meanwhile, Nick Fuentes, 100% loyal, calling Trump the only one who really fought the establishment for this part, really shows how the MAGA base is still split between true believers and those who feel bound by them. What do you think? Is Donald Trump still anti-establishment, or has he become part of the same machine?
Or someone like that, but I think both of us would take either of those options if they were on the table. But it is, and I do think, I thought the Epstein one was a particular, it's interesting how much that really was devastating for Donald Trump. And it was more than just the Epstein story. I think it was like what that symbolized, that it was like right at the heart of his political raison d'etre, which was draining the swamp.
Right.
And it was like, come on, man, what's a better example of the swamp than this? Oh, we won't touch that? Okay. All right, then. So I guess we know how serious we are about this. And I got to say, I see nothing promising about J.D. Vance. I think my view of it seems to be that I do think that he's maybe kind of sympathetic to my foreign policy views, and I think that he does seem to err more on that side, but I just don't think he has anywhere near the stones to stand up to anyone. I think he wants to be president more than he wants to care about that.
And yes, Deb keeps a balanced line, saying people went too far, but also that government power went unchecked. Nick Thor frames it as political precautions, which is where things get uncomfortable for a lot of listeners. For me, it's a reminder that the January 6th of debate is not about one day. It's about how Americans see truth and justice differently.
Well, no, not releasing the Epstein files is what gives and when I say file, just not getting to the bottom of it. That's what gives them that. And what is J.D. Vance going to run on? How is he going to capture that energy that Donald Trump had? We're furious with this system. The system is so corrupt and so dishonest and so such a betrayal to every American that we want someone to go in there and be a wrecking ball against them. How is J.D. Vance possibly going to capture that energy?
Right.
When there's nobody's believing it anymore.
Well, and with Trump, I feel like a lot of people just forgot really what he was. There were because I feel like not a lot of people actually voted for him in 2016 that are around now.
Yeah.
And you and I know, because we both, I mean, you're around longer than me, but we were both around then. And I feel like there's a lot of young people and maybe even like big supporters of Trump now that weren't really with him in 16. And so what I'm trying to say is, for a lot of people to have amnesia, they think that he's a Republican, he's a conservative, like, because that's really what he's become. That is what he was in 20. That's what he was in 24. He's against the radical left. He's against the Democrats. But in 16, he started out fighting the Republican establishment. And he really ran as like an independent.
Yeah.
And I always go back to the proposition of Trump. This is my basis for not voting for him last year, which is not, I'm better than the Democrats, which is the minimum.
Yeah.
You're a Republican. Oh, he's better than Kamala. Okay, isn't that a given? Like, shouldn't you be? It's not that he's a conservative or anything like that. He said, the system is rigged and it's broken. I will break it because I'm rich. I'm so rich, I don't need to take their money. And if I don't have to take their money, I can actually deliver real change because I don't have to worry about upsetting them. That, in a nutshell, was the premise. And that was his appeal. He would go up on the stage and, like, you watch this now and you're like, where's this guy? That famous clip where he goes, they're booing him, and he goes, that's all.
Into America's cultural divided. And this is where things get deep. Refs talks about how polarization is driven by both sides, never is of the while Nick and kind of double down, saying the country needs a clear identity too, even if it means conflict. It's classic libertarian versus nationalist tensions. My take, they are both describing the same problem, but from opposite ends. One wants more individual freedom, the other wants an unified culture. That's the real American paradox, right there.
The fake conversion, maybe he's a real convert, but it seems too convenient. Like, he's everything that Trump ran against. He's like Jeb Bush. He was calling Trump a Nazi and voted for McMullen, and it was a never Trumper. So, and I'm just unloading my case against him, but it's like they could not be more different. So to your point, how are you going to sell that? I don't know how any MAGA person is buying it, but I think they will.
And there's another thing where, like, you know, the vice presidency, you know, the role, it's an interesting job because there's really not a job. Exactly. But it makes you kind of like, oh, you're the next in line. But if you just remove that for a second, who would have ever thought J.D. Vance could carry a national election? J.D. Vance is not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the most famous human being who's ever lived, who's bombastic and charismatic and just like owns a room like no other. Like really is like as a unique gift in this way. Unfortunately, all of these gifts are only for like marketing and promotion and running for the, it's not like he has no governing, you know, ability at all. But like J.D. Vance doesn't have that. He doesn't have that factor, the Hitler aura, as you would describe it. You know what I mean? But like he just, and so it's you're just looking at this and you go, so look, if you're telling me that like the radical left Democrats are the real threat, which granted they are, it's like it seems like we're staring at them having a chance. Now, I guess the only thing, and again, this is an interesting dynamic, one that I've never really seen before in my lifetime, is where you see when Donald Trump's support like plummets, it doesn't seem to give any boost to the Democrats who are still kind of just like in the tank. And I think part of that is just because they failed so miserably over the last few years. But I do think, like, to your broader point, and I'm not even like saying 100% one way or the other, but it's something that like I think people who are, you know, dissidents, broadly speaking, of this system and are, you know, in opposition to the current regime need to think about a lot. Because yeah, like if our vote isn't a given, our support isn't a given, then it has to be worked for, you know, and also that things aren't always so clear, you know, like you could say Kamala Harris would have been worse than Donald Trump. Now, in this particular example, just on the border security, probably we're better off, all things considered, with Donald Trump. But at the same time, in a lot of ways, I think you could argue for right-wing America, it was better that Joe Biden won the 2020 election.
Yes.
Like, things improved in a way that you really could not have imagined them improving under Donald Trump. And I mean, culturally speaking, like, even after Donald Trump won in 2016, the culture didn't swing to the right. The culture swung even further to the left. The culture only started swinging back to the right when Joe Biden was in. It actually was easier when there was a brain dead president who represented the Democratic Party. And we had the wins, you know, in Twitter and the stuff I was talking about with like Target and Bud Light and all this stuff. And so, like, it's just not so you know, it's not always so obvious.
Yeah.
What's you know, as white men can't jump quote. Sometimes when you win, you actually lose, and sometimes when you lose, you actually win. And so I just think that I would hope, like, I hope maybe like Thomas Massie will run in primary him, or I would at least hope that there's something that kind of like gets the conversation over, like, no, actually, how about we expect you to be this? We expect you to actually be good. And nothing crazy. I'm not like even asking for, this is why I corrected you on the no compromise. Like, I'll compromise, okay?
Yes.
But like, don't get us in another stupid war. Like, you know, make policy dictated off what's best for America. We have to do something about this debt problem. Like, we have to at least attempt to tackle it, because we're drowning in it. And the answer can't just be continue to debase the currency, because it's destroying our country. It's like, and don't have a wide open border. Like, I'm just like, so few things. Like, if you could just be good on these few things, I'd be like, okay, I'll hold my nose over the rest. But there's got to be some way, and especially now with the new media landscape, with the amount of influence that me and you have right now, I don't know, we've got some opportunities to say, like, hey, no, we're not just going to go along with this. We ought to plant a flag at like one reasonable point and go, we're not bending on this.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we need to throw our weight around, and we'll have a much better opportunity to do that, because in 28, it's an open field on both sides. In 2016, 2024, Trump was like the 10,000-pound gorilla in the room, immovable. Like, you, me, all of us put together, like, no one was going to knock him off that trajectory, which is why maybe it was naive for me to like withhold the vote outside of like reasons in principle or for rhetoric. But in 28, we can shape the race, because, like you said, I don't think Vance is a shoo-in at all. He's not a national figure. Very good chance he goes the way of DeSantis, where it's a failure to launch, it's a crash and burn situation, and then it's wide open. And I would say that, people say that I'm like a Democrat, or like I wanted Kamala to win, and it's like, you think I don't know that Trump is better than Kamala. Everyone knows that. But I love what you said about these like knock-on second-order effects, because you're 100% right. Biden winning and like Trump getting banned from YouTube and all that, that's probably why Elon bought Twitter. Like, that maybe doesn't happen in a universe where Trump won the 2020 election and all the other downstream effects that took place. Trump being president now is sweeter than it would have been from 20 to 24. And you could have never predicted that, like you said, that Biden winning would force the pendulum to swing in the other direction. I think there was something true about, Trump and Kamala in 24. If Kamala inherited the war in Gaza and the Ukraine war, would we get something insanely radical in 28, like a real reset? Maybe. You can never know. What I would say, though, about 28, and this is maybe new, is like, when you look at what Trump is doing, he's creating a lot of tension right now. The ICE raids, the militarization of law enforcement, the war everywhere in Venezuela, Ukraine, Iran, the advance of AI and technology. It's like, if a Democrat wins in 29, I'm moving to another country, because whoever comes into power from the left is going to want blood, because they're going to want vengeance for all. If they regroup, that's sort of presumptuous. If they regroup and reorganize, they're going to kill us, because like in Chicago, I live right by where this is happening. They set up this detention facility. They're rounding people up, putting hype edits of it on Twitter. It's pissing liberals off. Liberals are going to the place, protesting. The cops are beating the shit out of them and laughing and taunting them. More protesters come. Now they're ramming cars into ICE cars. The cops are shooting them. Now they're bringing in DHS. It's like, we've gone so far up this escalation ladder in like 3 months. And what I fear is that Trump is not going to finish the job. He's not going to salt the earth and destroy Antifa. So all he's doing is pissing these people off. And that means the violence is going to get worse. They're going to organize. We're going to get like Mamdani for president in 28, or, something along that vein. And that's why I think it's really important that like a Republican does win, but it just can't be Vance. So like that's kind of how I'm thinking about it, because they're really barking up the wrong tree in my opinion. They're signing checks they can't cash.
Yeah, I mean, like, I wouldn't entirely close the door on Vance. I'm just like, he's got to show me something.
Yeah.
I got to see something that makes me go like, okay, I can get on board with this at least, which I just haven't seen yet. And I do worry about that a lot. I think it's something that, like, you should pay attention if you think about, say, like kind of the way the culture shifted over the last few years, which really is hard to like overstate how crazy it is, dude. Like me and you talked 5 years ago. We were living in a different world when me and you talked 5 years ago. It's not that long, And there's and you could obviously see right now, like looking at where the culture is, you're like, oh, the woke progressives really overplayed their hand in a lot of ways, right? And then there's a lesson in there to be learned that like things can change very quickly. And I do worry about that. You worry about like how far the Democrats went last time they were in power and what they might do again. It's also important to know that there were like a couple, for as much as I always say, like the American system is pretty broken and the Constitution is pretty destroyed, but there still are some things. And I think people don't appreciate enough the fact that the two major ones that got shut down. Number one was the OSHA vax mandate. Joe Biden had legislated that every company with 100 or more employees must fire anyone who doesn't get this vaccine. This would have been a huge event and massive control of government, particularly, not explicitly targeting right-wingers, but who the hell wasn't getting the vax, And then the other one was the Ministry of Truth, which ended up getting shut down. Now, both of these ended up getting struck down, but man, might we be living in a different world had they gone through. And so who knows what they would try to do again. Also, as you talked about before, which is like kind of a broader theme, is that there is this, Netanyahu's snapback about controlling the media and how he was just openly bragging. I really couldn't believe he was openly bragging. I said on the show, I said, I think this video is supposed to be a secret recording where he's talking in Hebrew. Like, is he actually just on camera saying this in English? Really? But so they're talking. But I do wonder, and I wonder how you think about this, because and this is something that concerns me, particularly about you and the Groypers, and more broadly, just kind of the Twitter culture or what's on social media. It does seem to me like I'm slow motion, almost like watching this movie play out, where it's like it would have seemed impossible 5 years ago. 5 years ago, or I guess 6 years ago, the second time you were on the podcast, you had just been kicked off YouTube. It was just ramping up that like, hey, you simply can't do these things on YouTube. Even like I'm going to put this up on YouTube. I guess we'll test it. We'll test where they're at now. But I just see you're doing other interviews that are up there. I figured, why not? I think it's okay. We're in you can say things on Twitter now that you couldn't have dreamed of saying. But now that the censorship regime has been rolled back and like Nazi shit is just flooding in, it does seem to me like, oh man, this is like setting up the pretext. It's setting up the pretext for like, hey, you guys wanted to have freedom of speech? Well, here's what it actually looks like. Now can we all agree that this must be shut down? And like, now, I'm not saying I know that's going to happen, but it's a real concern of mine. And I wonder what you think about all that.
I totally agree. And the first time that kind of was clocking to me was when I think it was on Fresh and Fit. And I love Myron and I like Fresh too. But it was on their show where I think some like ghetto black woman said like, fuck F the Jews and we love it. And it went like super viral. And like,
yeah, I think I saw this clip.
Usual Suspects seized up on that. And it's like, and I didn't say anything to him privately, but you could see where that's going to go in very short order, where there's no shortage of stuff like that you can find, that certain people are putting out there on a daily basis. And it's not measured. It's not nuanced. There's no point. It's just vulgar. It's vulgar. It is hateful. It definitely probably crosses a line. It doesn't like serve the conversation. Like it's one thing to say Jewish identity, blah, blah, blah. It's another to say F these people. Like that's different. And I 100% believe there's going to be another censorship push, and they're going to use shit like that to justify it. So that's why I've really tried, and I'm not the most disciplined person, but I've really been trying this year to be more restrained and measured. And that, and the audience, they perceive everything as cucking. If you're not sprinting towards the most vulgar, extreme, fanatical, they say that you got the call. But it's so important because there is a window of opportunity here. And you and I have been around long enough to recognize that because you're right. It was a different country in 2015, completely different country. And we don't want to squander that. But then again, you wonder how much of it is even in our control. Will they do it anyway?
No, I
But
think that's right.
we should control what we can control.
No, I think that's right. And I think that, it's something for us to even, always keep in mind too, because it's hard, like when you start growing, I know you've, I'm sure, experienced this, right? But it's like like when you have a show and it's getting like 10,000 views a show, you can kind of know your audience. You're like, I know what my audience thinks. When you're getting like 500,000, views in a show, it's like if 50,000 people are furious at you, it's like the whole lot. But actually, no, that's not the whole lot. There's a much bigger audience. And like, even as you've said, as you've been trying to, not moderate isn't the word, but like just be more careful or just be more mature, I guess, which is natural for all of us. I mean, I'm still a big child in a lot of ways. But you kind of realize that it's like, well, as you're doing that, actually your audience is growing. It's not like you're losing your audience. It's not like they're abandoning you. I do just think that there is, like even what you were saying with that, it goes, the problem with, because who the hell cares what some ghetto black chick says on Myron's show, and I like Myron, I've done his show before, but who cares what one of these fucking chicks says on there? But the reason to care is because that is the type of thing that will convince normal, reasonable people that, you know what, in fact, you're right. This is too fucking insane. Like they're praising Adolf Hitler. Like this is, and so you just like, I don't know, like in the same like vein of these second and third order effects, it's like I just think you want to try to encourage people to be smart. You're right, we can't control what our audience says, and me and you have experienced that in the last couple weeks. A very clear demonstration of that, and that's good. Our audience shouldn't just be taking our orders or anything, but we should exert influence where we can and go like, hey, think about this. Just like be smart and think about what you're setting up here, because of course, like there's no question that they're thinking about plugging up this hole. Now, what they're going to be able to do about it, who knows? It does feel to me like maybe this thing's gotten away from them, but it's not like they don't have a few tricks up their sleeves. And so we should. I mean, I think we should just think about these things and what the response to it might be, because they're certainly planning. They're very aware of this. That's one of the things that was interesting about Netanyahu's meeting there. It was so interesting that, I mean, I know you must have just been cackling, laughing like I was at this, but the fact that Netanyahu had to deny that he had Charlie Kirk murdered multiple times is like they're aware that things are different. You know what I mean? Like it really is just so hard to imagine. Maybe because I'm a little older, it's like even more hard for me to imagine, because it's just like, this is so unthinkable. It's so unthinkable when I was younger that this would be the case today. But it is, and they've got their eye on this as well. So we're, like you said, we have an opportunity that feels almost like a trap.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, like it just like has that feeling like you're like, wait a minute, this whole thing has been lifted and we're all cool now. It's like, wait, we all agree it's retarded to trans kids? Everyone agrees. Okay. That's kind of interesting. But at the same time, it does feel like, okay, the second act is coming, or the next act is coming, and I worry about what that's going to be. Yeah,
I totally agree. You're waiting for the next shoe to drop, because we've experienced this like suffocating political control that seems like they almost know every permutation of how things are going to end up. And now it's like, so Mark Zuckerberg decided free speech is good now? Like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that there is an ulterior motive. And I think that I'm always just in favor of doing the thing that's unpredictable. Because if to the extent that they have power, it's because they can predict what will happen next or how we'll behave. And so that's why I try to just surprise people and do the thing they're not expecting me to do. Like if they bring me back on Twitter and maybe there's an angle, it's because they're expecting me to be what they think I am, which is a troll or a hater or whatever. So maybe walk it back or be restrained or, And I think that we really need to be intentional and cautious. Like after Charlie died, I called up a lot of people that I know that are like influencers. And I was like, we just really need to be careful to not step into a trap, because it seems like whenever there's a crisis, and you never think it's going to happen, but when there's a crisis, you get kind of riled up and you act in ways that are not smart, and by you, I mean anyone does, me, you, anyone, because emotions are high. Rationality goes out the window, and it's easy to forget all the hard-fought lessons we've learned over the years that have, produced bad results for us. So, with all the violence, chaos, the uncertainty, unprecedented nature of where we are, we just have to be extremely cautious, vigilant, intentional about what we're doing, what we're saying. It just can't be sloppy. because if we're sloppy, the thing about Netanyahu and them is they are really smart and they are you think they don't know? They know. Like you said, they know astutely. Even to the extent that Matt Walsh says, let them kill each other. That's a brilliant innovation because they knew the pro-Israel thing was losing. And you think they're just going to keep pressing that button until it doesn't work anymore. No, they switched up quick and said, we can't get him to support. We'll get him to say this line about, well, we don't want Muslims here. They reinvent all the time. So the game is not over. That's what people need to keep in mind. You run through the finish line, you run through first base. It isn't over. And I like what you said. They always have something up their sleeve. So you can't presume that we're running away with it. We get careless, sloppy, do a victory celebration. It's still in flux.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about this because I think this is a topic that I find very fascinating, and I think you're kind of uniquely like a perfect example of this. But so 2019, you got your YouTube channel taken, and then was that around the same time you got kicked off everything else, or was it?
Here is the bottom line. This part of the problem episode with Dave Smith and Nick Fuentes is not just a debate. It's a mirror of America right now. You have got Dave, the voice of liberty and logic, going head to head with Nick, the unapologetic nationalist who says a culture war has to be fought, and between them, you can feel the split inside the right itself. Freedom versus control, unity versus identity, love them or hate them. These conversations proves one thing: fight for the future of America is not left versus fight anymore. It will survive. I am Deepak. You are watching US News Network. Stay safe, stay informed, and hit the subscribe button for more real talk, no filter. Thank you.